The March 12, 2020 meeting of the Williamsburg City Council will come to order. Ms. Felica, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Maslin.
Here.
Ms. Ramsey.
Here.
Mayor Freiling.
Here.
Vice Mayor Pons.
Here.
Mr. Zhang.
Here.
Under matters of special privilege, we do not have anything listed on the agenda today, but I would like to just say a few words on behalf of my colleagues regarding the situation that this community and communities across the world are dealing with related to the novel coronavirus or COVID-19. As of this morning, there have been 11 cases identified in Virginia. Also, as of this morning, there were over 127,000 cases worldwide. But I think it's worth noting that more than 68,000 of those, or more than half of the people, have already recovered. The Virginia Department of Health has appropriate plans in place to deal with this health issue. Fire Chief David Eagle hosted a regional meeting with James City and York counties, the Virginia Department of Health, Virginia Department of Emergency Management, William and Mary, Colonial Williamsburg, and the Jamestown-Yorktown Foundation, and others in order to prepare as a region. The city manager and I met with the Peninsula mayors and chairs and Virginia Department of Health Emergency Coordinator Kevin Pierce last week to ensure that all Peninsula jurisdictions are on the same page. We've had multiple conversations with our local hospital, the Health Foundation, William and Mary, and other community partners, as well as our fellow jurisdictions. City Manager Trivette has met with city staff to discuss ways to be prepared for the inevitable impact to our city. He has asked each department head to prepare plans. Today, the city manager issued a memo to staff about adjustments to the city's travel and sick policies, as well as other procedures, including possible limitations on event permits. The city is installing hand sanitizing stations in our buildings, including the Williamsburg Regional Library and the train station. The best information regarding the coronavirus can be found at the CDC website or here in Virginia at the Department of Health website, and those links can both be found on the city's website. Mr. Trivette, we were going to put a button on the landing page to take people directly to that site. Have we done that?
What we're doing is we're adding to the scrolling pictures one that does take you straight to the COVID-19 page, and then at the bottom under the spotlight there'll be a button that takes you there as well.
I want to emphasize that these steps are not being taken out of fear. They are precautionary and designed to help limit the spread of the virus. We have a responsibility, an obligation to our community, to the Commonwealth, and to our nation to do all that we can to help stem the tide. The virus will continue to spread, and more people will become infected. But there are things we can each do to help mitigate that impact. Do not panic. It does no good and can only distract us from productive efforts. Do not hoard supplies, please. Cases of disinfectant or hand sanitizer sitting on your laundry room shelf do no good for someone else in this community who might need those supplies. We need for everybody to be actively prepared in order to meet this challenge. For now, the best thing for all of us to do is to take precautions similar to those that are advised for flu season. Stop shaking hands. Fist bump, elbow bump, slight bow, or toe tap, whatever suits your fancy. Just say hello. It works pretty well. Wash your hands regularly and thoroughly for at least 20 seconds a wash, certainly after using the restroom and prior to eating anything, but also additional times during the day, and particularly after touching surfaces in a public space. Use hand sanitizer and make sure that it is at least 60% alcohol. If you have to sneeze or cough, use a tissue and discard it immediately. If a tissue is not available, the crook of your arm is the next best choice. But keep in mind that the virus potentially can last for hours on a surface. Avoid touching your face. Far easier said than done. The average person does it hundreds of times per day without even thinking about it. Be conscious about touching public doorknobs, banister rails, elevator buttons, etc. Use disinfectant wipes on shopping carts if they're available in the grocery store. And stay away from others if you're sick. Absolutely, do not go to work or go to school. As I said earlier, the virus will continue to spread, and our daily lives will face more disruptions, possibly even hardships. But we must be flexible and adapt as necessary. The more effective we are at this, the sooner we will all emerge on the other side. Again, there's no need for panic or fear. What we need is resolve, and compassion. Take care of your family. Look for opportunities to care for others, for your neighbors who may need it. And as with most things in life, we will be far more successful working together than we could ever be at going it alone. My fellow council members and all city staff, and especially our public safety personnel, are committed to see this through, and we appreciate your patience with the inevitable changes that we must make in order to succeed. Thank you. Mr. Trivette, is there anything you'd like to add, specifics?
One thing that we have changed, just even since this morning, as you said, this is a rapidly changing situation, and we're reacting to it as quickly as we can, is we've decided to close the Quarter Path Recreation Center at 4:30 today on its regular schedule, and it will not reopen until Monday. We'll revisit whether we're going to do that long-term.
That's Monday the 16th?
That's right.
And that will be a flexible arrangement depending upon how things
Yes.
continue.
Right. We're going to take this sort of in 2-week planning periods and take cases as we can. The Quarter Path Rec Center, like I said, we'll revisit opening it on Monday. And of course, I think Robbie, the Director of Parks and Recreation, will be sending out notifications to user groups and posting signs on the doors, and we'll put it on the website.
Great. Questions?
In terms of the Health and Human Services, Ms. Wendy, for our most vulnerable and at-risk populations, are there any steps that the department is preparing to take with regard to this issue?
Yes, one thing is that we're trying to minimize our face-to-face contact if we're allowed. So if we can do case management or take care of business by phone, we're trying to take those steps to minimize the face-to-face contact.
Thank you for your leadership, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome. We have one public hearing today. That is consideration for grant of a utility easement to William and Mary for fiber optic service. Mr. Clayton?
So, Mayor, members of council, before you today is a request from the College of William and Mary for an easement on cross-city property. The William and Mary Real Estate Foundation recently purchased the former Executive Health Center at 332 North Henry Street and needs to run a fiber optic cable to connect the building to the rest of the college's network. The college also owns the property at 427 Scotland Street, which has fiber connected to it. And so the easement's going to run from the rear of that property to the rear of the property at 332. We have looked at the route. We feel good about the route. It's about 130 foot of cross-city property, basically on the community building property. There's no other utilities and whatnot in there, so we think it's a good idea. Actually, is one of our suggestions to the college. The cable will be drilled, so we'll be no disruption to the property. It's all underground drilling. And both our city attorney and the college's legal folks have okayed the easement document. So with that, any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Any questions for Mr. Clayton before we open the public hearing?
Just real quick, we had several years ago granted an easement for fiber optic to get to the building that it's at today.
Right.
So we're just essentially continuing the loop to their newly acquired property.
City Council granted a license.
The license.
Yeah.
Other questions for Mr. Clayton? With that, I'll open the public hearing and invite anyone who would like to comment on this matter to please come forward. Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing and come back to my colleagues for discussion. Questions?
No question. You know, this is a piece of our property that clearly isn't going to be developed for anything in the future. It's not in the way of any growth or any activity. It doesn't impede us in any way, and I think it helps one of our community partners. So I think it's a fine idea.
I support the easement grant.
So
We're a
we go
little out
back
of
and
order
forth
today.
Here. Yes, I agree with Doug that William & Mary is a critical partner of the city and fully support granting this easement.
I agree.
Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that City Council authorize the city manager to execute all necessary documents to convey the utility easement on city property at 401 North Boundary Street to William and Mary.
Second.
Ms. Felica?
Aye.
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 Vice Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Mr. Zhang?
Aye.
That concludes our public hearings for today and takes us to reports. Monthly financial statement. Mr. Trivette, anything you'd like to highlight?
Ms. Stammer and I talked about this earlier. There's nothing that really jumps out at us at this financial report. I will tell you that we're watching closely the revenue lines as they result from any impact of COVID-19. It's hard to say what that impact might be, but we have sent out, and as you said, Mayor, in our memorandum to the staff, that they should be aware that budgetary changes are possible if we start to see revenue slump.
Questions for Mr. Trivette?
No.
Monthly departmental operating reports.
Submitted for your review.
Anybody? Mr. Maslin?
I wanted to take a look, for those of you who are online, if you click on reports under monthly department operating reports, it'll come up to performance summary, and I wanted to take a quick look at environmental sustainability. And that lists 4 key performance indicators: tons of recycled collected, number of new Go Green initiatives, number of stormwater inspections, and tons of garbage collected. So first, looking at the recycling and the garbage collected, one of the questions is, would it be good to have a KPI that focuses on the percent of recycling collected, percent of total waste, to show that, we want to be increasing, that percentage more?
Yes, that's a good point. We do keep track of that, Mr. Maslin. We report to the state, but there's a state goal of 25%, and we've met that goal. Actually, we do a regional report through VIPS, our Solid Waste Authority, and they submit a big report to the state, so it's all done on a regional basis. But nonetheless, we do our own report and give that to pass it off to VIPS, and they use that. And just roughly speaking, in the last few years, we're running around 40% recycled. Now, quick to point out that a lot of that is asphalt recycling, which is a heavy material, which helps our numbers, concrete recycling, that kind of thing. Of course, the residential recycling is a big thing. And there's several other that the city does in-house. Paper recycling, oil. So we have our own little thing in-house, and we have the residential recycling, we have business recycling, and unfortunately the business thing is a little bit of a mixed bag because that's a voluntary thing. The businesses are requested to provide us information, so we do get some feedback from them, but not as much as we like. But anyway, your point's well taken. I think we could probably look into changing that to a percentage because, like I said, we're already doing that. So.
Yeah, I think in the interest of transparency, I think that's useful information to be reported to the citizens, because I think we're doing a great job. It's just maybe we're not communicating it.
So I have a question. How do we adjust, or have we adjusted for the limitations in recycling with the new contract? Because I'm a big yogurt eater, and, I can't recycle any of those containers, so I would think that residential recycling might have gone down with the restriction somewhat.
It's gone down some. Of course, those kind of the yogurt cups are on a lot of weight, but
particularly empty containers.
Yeah, so it's going down some, but not appreciably. So, but overall, as you probably know, the recycling thing is really struggling. The good news, I think we've kind of got rid of some of the contamination, which also reduced our numbers. But it's good stuff that's getting recycled, so we're not throwing a bunch of trash in the recycling as much as we were.
So moving to the number of new Go Green initiatives, and this one may be where the computer programs, the terminology may be not showing the true picture. So it says we have 12 new initiatives, which were the 12 electric vehicle charging stations. You've actually have more initiatives than just that, right?
Right. Well, yeah, the intent was to do the 12 electric stations. I don't know that we have 12 initiatives. We do have other initiatives. We have a lot of lighting initiatives. We've done some lighting on Richmond Road, Jamestown Road, converting to LED fixtures, and we're also trying to do the same thing in our Prince George parking garage. So we're doing some things. So I think what's misleading is that it shouldn't have said initiatives. I think it should have just said, it should have honed in on the charging stations as opposed to 12. So we have several initiatives, but we don't have 12 separate initiatives. So.
And then the final one was the number of storm water inspections, and that may be also a little misleading because you basically consolidate those into a one-time period. The KPIs say that you need to do 8 or more inspections a month. So far, you've done 13 for the first 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, we generally do those, like you said, at one time, over a month to 2-month period. So we probably should take the eight per month out of there, because we don't like to just do a few. We get on a roll. We just like to do them all, and we can do those pretty. It sounds like a lot, 100, but some of those are very small things to look at. I mean, it doesn't take but a couple minutes to look at. There's some a little more involved. It's underground storage, storm drainage storage, a little more complicated, but yeah, we can. I think the measure's fine. I just don't think we should put the 8 per month.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else? City manager reports?
None today.
None today. City attorney report?
Nothing today.
Well, we're on a roll. Unfinished business? None today. This takes us to new business. The first item is consideration and approval of Resolution 20-03, requesting VDOT maintenance payments for certain streets. Welcome, Mr. Small.
Thank you, sir. Members of council, this is our annual acceptance time for streets that are not listed on VDOT's urban maintenance inventory system. And this year, we only have 5 streets. They are not new, but they were streets that are in the historic area, approximately 0.89 miles, centerline miles of road. And then these were discovered when we were kind of going through the list of streets that we were taking back from Colonial Williamsburg for maintenance. This will add about 1.78 lane miles of local streets. And this will provide just under $23,000 of additional maintenance funds per year at the current rates. VDOT requires under the Code of Virginia to have a resolution accepting those for maintenance and or requesting maintenance payments. And so that is Resolution 20.03 in front of you. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Small?
So thank you for finding these streets that I guess we hadn't previously submitted for maintenance funds. Do you think there are any other in the city that
I'm always searching for them, but I think I found all of them at this point. These were just, in many cases, a lot of these streets are pretty narrow. For instance, Queen Street. Queen Street, it previously did not meet the requirements of what was in the state law as far as acceptable for maintenance. But under some of the new rules, you can interpret it a little bit differently. And talking it over with my counterparts at VDOT, they more than meet the requirements.
Thank you for finding them.
Anybody else?
No questions, thank you.
Your motion?
I move that City Council approve Resolution 20-03, accepting certain streets into the city street system and authorize the city manager to request maintenance funds from VDOT consistent with the staff recommendation.
Second.
Ms. Felico?
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Fryling?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Mr. Zhang?
Aye.
Our second item under new business is the Emergency Operations Plan, and to present it today, we have Chief Eagle. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor Fryling, members of City Council. Before you today for your consideration is the 2020 update of the city's Emergency Operation Plan, better known as the EOP. As you may recall, the Code of Virginia requires each local jurisdiction to prepare and keep current a local EOP and have it formally adopted by the governing body. every 4 years. So this is that 4-year update and adoption period. It's this plan that becomes the legal basis for operations during times of emergency, and this provides the structure that allows Williamsburg to be part of the mutually supportive statewide emergency management system, allowing state support and resources when they're needed. The purpose of the EOP, as well as becoming part of the state system, is it sets forth the structure, the roles, the responsibilities, the main principles for managing emergencies of all types occurring in Williamsburg. It incorporates operating procedures for preparing, responding, and recovering from these hazards that impact the city and could disrupt our normal operations. Things such as hazardous materials incidents, major fires, significant weather-related emergencies, public health advisories, as well as in recent years we added planned events, large-scale planned events where you're managing large numbers of potential resources. With the implementation of these policies and procedures, it helps us as a government to better manage operations and minimize the impact that these severe incidents could have on our community, and it helps us recover after the fact to get back to a new sense of normalcy. In addition to the basic plan that was included in your agenda packet, there are 3 standalone documents. The first of those is the Local Emergency Planning Committee document. That document deals specifically with hazardous materials, and it's designed to meet SARA Title III, which is also known as the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act. Basically, that's any kind of hazardous materials or chemicals that are in our community or coming through our community. It gives us an opportunity to know what they are so that we can plan and better be prepared for those types of incidents. Other than the changes of the LEPC committee members, which rotates periodically, there's been no changes to that specific document. However, the LEPC committee meeting which meets quarterly, met earlier this week, and they are reviewing this document as well as bylaws and other things to see if there's any potential changes that could need to take place. The second standalone document is the Radiological Emergency Response Plan. This plan deals with our nuclear and radiological type emergencies. We exercise that plan every other year as we participate in Dominion Power's Regional Surrey VOPEX drill, as well as other times throughout the year. Just recently, we participated in a radiological drill by the Riverside Doctors Hospital. And then the last standalone document is the hazard mitigation document. This is all included as part of the EOP, but it is a regional document which identifies hazards within the community, and it helps us to prioritize the efforts that would be needed to reduce or eliminate consequences of those hazards should they occur. That is done on a regional level that includes the entire Hampton Roads, and it's done on a 5-year adoption cycle instead of the 4-year as this EOP is, and it becomes due in 2022. So you'll be hearing more about that as we get closer. In addition to the plan as it's presented, there's 10 hazard-specific annexes that are also part of the EOP. Those sections have been redacted from the public view of this because they have specific strategic and tactical considerations that may need to take place during a hazard-specific type of emergency. Those annexes provide additional guidance, and they set forth procedures and specific contacts that we would use in order to handle different types of emergencies. The layout of the plan itself, the way it's laid out, meets a statewide template that they give us. It's not required to go by that template, but it helps keep all jurisdictions in the Commonwealth kind of on the same playing field so that we can interact and be more interoperable together. Each city department that has a specific role in the EOP has had an opportunity to review their section of the EOP. They've provided valuable updates as needed, as well as our partners at VDM, Virginia Department of Emergency Management, has also reviewed it and approved our plan. During the 4-year renewal period, periodically there are changes that take place, and there's a track change form at the beginning of that page where we would note any of those changes, and then at the 4-year mark, when it's due to be adopted, we incorporate any of those changes into the document itself. So, but based on the cover letter you received, you will see that there are very, very minimal, there were no major changes to the plan this year. They're always reviewed to make sure that it complies with all federal and state regulations. We always upgrade the demographic and geographic information in the document. We, from time to time, update organizational and assigned responsibilities based on what the city's doing. And this particular year, we removed the deputy city manager position from that, since that position is no longer are not currently being filled, and we put in some succession planning dealing with that, as well as adding language that allows the city manager to designate an acting director of emergency management in his absence. Just as he, when he goes away or is not available, he can assign someone acting city manager roles. In that role, they also act as emergency management during his absence. And then there's a plan in there in case that cannot be done. It allows you all as council members to appoint someone into that role to serve as the emergency manager. And then, of course, every year there's revisions to definitions and acronyms as things change throughout the year. As far as the annexes are standalone documents that give us more guidance for hazard-specific emergencies. The biggest changes in those is that we have added some joint plans with their mass care and sheltering, as well as a RACFAC plan, which is a reception assistance center, which allows us, it's regional, with the thought that usually these types of major events are going to affect us on a regional level. So the Family Assistance Center and the Reception Center is new plans that have been put in place to allow us to assist families during large-scale mass casualty type incidents of that nature. So today, before you, our recommendation is for you to adopt the city's emergency operation plan. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you, Chief.
I don't think I've had any questions. I mean, clearly you're the expert, and glad to hear that your team has taken a look at this, and as well as the other department heads. And then just the regional participation and cooperation and making sure that all the plans are jiving kind of really exemplify to me that the plan is where it needs to be. And while there's, minimal changes, I think the efforts to get the plan to where it is today and ensure that it's encompassing are not minimal efforts. So I appreciate the
Thank you, Chief. And I had a couple questions, actually. Don't go anywhere. Now, so for my work with one of my law classes, I had to look through a lot of EOPs with another Virginia locality, and they did publish their annexes for whatever reason. And a lot of that locality, that region, was more focused on coastal storm hazards, which may make sense why they may publish the annex. But I'm just curious, members of the public can obviously have access to the ones that we are considering today. But for the other annexes, is there not a way for folks to be able to view that? Is that not subject, perhaps this is a question for Ms. Shelton, is it not subject to freedom of information requests? I'm just trying to get a handle of.
Some of them
Mean
may
by-
be if they contain strategic information that involves details that would be dangerous if they were released out into the public, like police response
Right.
plans, for example. So those may not be, there has to be a specific FOIA exception. I haven't looked at them, and so I can't say that there are 3 or there are 5.
And every locality does their EOP in a different way, but it's just something that struck me, and I wanted to at least clarify from that.
Yeah, and I think she's right. I think sometimes it gets into tactical considerations that from a security aspect,
And this has been done consistently before? This has been a past practice of the city?
yes, this was followed, we followed the exact same way that we have done it in the past here.
Yeah, and that, just one other notice, I would be remiss to, if I had not mentioned how grateful we are to have the Citizens Emergency Response Team. And I see that they have a role to play, obviously, with the EOP. And not every locality is fortunate to have resources like that. And that goes both ways, the city providing that resource and also willing citizens to participate their time with it. And I know they comprise a very small part of the EOP, but every hands are on deck when there's an emergency, and that's a lot to be thankful for.
Absolutely. To have volunteers like that to step forward and help during those times is a great resource to have.
And just to clarify, I know the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission got involved because you were talking about the Hampton Roads regional aspect to it. But just to focus on our next door neighbor region with York County and James City County, just to clarify, how aligned are we with their EOPs? Do you sit down with other chiefs from those neighboring jurisdictions and kind of go over some of the details as appropriate?
Yes, we absolutely do, and everyone, we have the same VDEM planner that assists all of us. It's reviewed by that planner, and we work together on a regular basis to discuss different issues. The things that we added with the sheltering, the family assistance plans are all, we're working on MOUs now between not only our governmental entities, but also our other stakeholders such as William and Mary and Colonial Williamsburg. So we're getting input and assistance, and we review these things on a fairly regular basis to make sure that all our major stakeholders are involved and understand, and so that we can all kind of play on by the same playbooks, so to speak, during these times, because you don't want to start making the acquaintances and learning a new plan when something happens. You want to have those things done ahead of time so that you know who the right person is and you know exactly how to operate.
Well, I just wanted finally to commend you and staff for working on this extremely professional document. It's kind of what you alluded to. When there's an emergency, you have to be able to have the infrastructure to be able to be ready and go on a moment's notice. And it's clearly evident here, and appreciate all the work and effort that you've done.
Thank you, and I will say it's a total team effort, so all the city departments have been involved in it, as well as partners, as you mentioned, as well as the state. So it's and then we had some coordination with the consultant that kind of helped facilitate that and bring us all together so that we could facilitate all the different parts and get everything on the same page. So it was a good team effort, and I think we've got a good end playbook, so to speak, from that.
I don't have any questions or comments other than to reiterate a thank you and a very thorough, comprehensive document that's been updated. Thank you.
A couple comments and questions. So as the chief talked about, we got the record of changes here. So it is really a living document. So in between the formal adoption of updates, they can be kept current. And we talked about the LEPC. We're actually looking at our bylaws. And so in conjunction with this, so there may be some changes coming forward, because I think the LEPC has a very narrow definition in the EOP. But then on the other side, we're looking at the bylaws and the mission in the LEPC, and it has a little more tactical direction than that we think is maybe appropriate. So we may be backing out of that, so that there could be some coordination coming up. The one question on the where we had the chart, the organizational chart, and this may have been put together before we got our hospital back in the city, but we have William and Mary and we have Colonial Williamsburg there, but we don't recognize the hospital in that organization. Is there some reason that maybe we couldn't put that in there?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but absolutely they can be added to that, and we work with them almost weekly with some aspect or another. We just participated in a drill that they had just a couple weeks ago. So, yeah, if they're not in there, that's something we can certainly add, and it was an oversight
And not to speak for the chief, but just based on some of the other EOPs, I have read 5 of them, 5 other ones that are distinct from the city. They don't necessarily all mention about the hospitals, but I'm sure it's.
Well, this is a big component, especially with our EMS for what we're doing here.
Yeah, they have a seat in, I believe, in our Emergency Operations Center during a large-scale stand-up, and they do have a very vital role to play.
And I only researched one other one, and that was, it was interesting, the city of Charlottesville is actually a combined EOP with the University of Virginia and Albemarle County. They actually have one for 3 of them working together seamlessly. But the thing that I thought was interesting, because we had talked about yesterday, did we have an annex for the pandemic flu? And I think we don't specifically have that, but we have the general framework. But
Yes, so the annex is more broad into, basically it's anything health and EMS related, and then we develop specific to whatever the pandemic may be, whether it be COVID-19 or whether it be H1N1 or whether it be any other type of health-related concern. We have the framework and we have the contacts, and it basically talks about leaning heavily on the Virginia Department of Health to get that guidance specific to whatever particular incident it may be.
one of the things I noticed in their Appendix A was they actually have a University of Virginia pandemic flu plan. So that might be worth, looking at, especially if there's confidential information that you have access to by contacting them to see if it informs anything. And then going back online, looking at some of the research there, it was actually, they had one of their doctors, talking about the pandemic flu, and I noticed the date was 2007 in terms of this prediction, so.
Wow.
Might be some good information there.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Chief, I just want to congratulate you and the entire team on the whole plan, but particularly the last 2 pages. When you can fill almost 2 complete pages with acronyms, you've got a great document going. The other thing, if you could just speak to for a moment to the plan itself, or as the part that we have is 42 pages. You don't wait for something to happen and then all of a sudden go, oh my gosh, let's go get the plan and see what we're supposed to do. You're internalizing the aspects of this plan on a regular basis into your operational thought. So can you talk just a little bit about how you do that?
Yes, you're absolutely correct. And there's, the plan is there, but as Mr. Maslin said, it's a dynamic plan that's constantly changing as new things come out and new diseases, new threats, new whatever it may be. But it's something that it is a document on a shelf, but if it stays on the shelf, it's no good to anybody. So it's kind of that initial framework and that playbook that all emergencies kind of go back to. So when so every week we're utilizing portions of that, whether we pull out the book and research it or not, whether it be something like a planned event with the 4th of July celebration at Colonial Williamsburg. We utilize a portion of the EOP, whether it be the hurricane that's coming. We stand up a initial activation with just monitoring and looking and start reading through the plans as we track that storm as it comes nearer. We look at it for things like we're dealing with now with COVID-19 and looking at who the big players are, and then we will develop a pandemic plan based on that initial framework that kind of sets that guidance for us. So it's not something we pull out and look at every day, but it's that quick reference guide that gives us the ability to operate on one set of rules. It sets the legal terminology to allow us to get state assistance and be part of that state system. It provides the common language with the National Incident Management System to be able to communicate and operate with other jurisdictions throughout not only the region but throughout the Commonwealth. So it's something that kind of sets that initial foundation, and we kind of just automatic now. We know who to call and we know how to operate when we have certain threats to this community. We know what we need to do and how to start ramping that up and when to start calling meetings and when to start, whether it be a partial or full activation of our emergency operation plan.
And even outside of the onset of a specific event, you still undertake periodic training exercises with community partners, and the plan plays a role in how those are rolled out?
Absolutely. Yeah, periodically throughout the year. We just had to cancel a drill with William and Mary that took part of this because of the current threat that's out there. We didn't think we should all be gathering and doing a drill. As I said, we just did one with Riverside Hospital, and we talk with James City as well as York County on a regular basis to come up with mutual agreements on how we can best serve the region through our plans and by sharing our resources with each other.
Well, once again, thank you. Any other last-minute questions? Thank you, Chief.
I move that City Council approve Resolution 20-04 to adopt the updated Emergency Operations Plan for the period of March 2020 through March 2024.
Second.
Ms. Felico?
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Fryling?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Mr. Zane?
Aye.
Our last item under new business is the consolidation and approval of resolution number 20-05. Consideration and approval of resolution 20-05 supporting the redesignation of local workforce development areas 14 and 16 as a new single local workforce development area. Mr. Trivette?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This item was brought to us by Councilman Maslin, who serves on the Peninsula Workforce Board. This is a project that's been in discussion now for the last several months, maybe as many as 6, talking about the possibility of merging the two workforce boards, the South Side Workforce Board and the Peninsula Workforce Board, to better marshal those resources and take advantage of having all of that in one spot. The next step in moving forward with that is to consolidate the actual consolidation of those boards in terms of the legal issues that involve the state. In order for them to proceed with that, they need a resolution of support from all the governing bodies that participate, including us. So the Workforce Board, the Peninsula Workforce Board, has drafted the resolution that is attached, and the staff recommends approval.
Questions, comments, Mr. Trivette? Mr. Trivette, I have just one question, and I support this completely. And I also wonder, this seems exemplary of the pendulum swing effect that we have in some of these regional cooperative efforts, where at times we want to have a bigger, broader group of people involved, and then sometimes when that happens, our area can be a little less the focus because of the greater population centers to the east and south of us. And then at other times, we want to bring it back down to a smaller group so that we get more attention. So we're comfortable that that's not going to be a concern with it.
Right, I actually think that in this case, it'll be the opposite effect. I think that us partnering with them is going to improve the resources that are available to our residents.
And they gave a presentation at the, of RIFA, if I'm saying that right, last meeting we had, and as Mr. Trivette said, it just makes sense, and I think we'll sort of increase the benefits for everyone.
Yeah, a couple of the benefits are, when we're facing off to employers, there's a single point of contact for the whole region, which helps them know who to work with. Also, hopefully we'll have access to more funds, specifically non-restricted funds, because the federal funds we get now are for specific clients, and we want to have broader services than that. And then also, I was waiting for Barbara to ask if it's going to cost us any more money. But it'll be actually helping us, because the per capita that we're paying now is actually more than the per capita for that the Hampton Roads group is paying. So there'll probably be an average of that, so it'll actually help us financially too. The other thing that I just want to mention is that we've been working with the board and Historic Triangle Thomas Nelson Community College to get a one-stop employment center at our community college here. That was scheduled for the beginning of July. With what's going on now with the colleges, may be delayed a little bit, but we're still seeing everything moving forward on that.
And something that just wanted to remark, going back to your point, Mr. Mayor, about how does this impact our region when we have such a large organization with this consolidation now. Since stepping down from the Peninsula Board, I had the opportunity to continue to serve on the Hampton Roads Workforce Council's Communications Committee. And we had met and convened yesterday, and they were ecstatic to keep Williamsburg involved and wanted to keep engaged and asked us, what could they do to better serve and provide resources for our region. So hopefully someone either on this dais or perhaps a staff member could take on that committee assignment later on to keep on with the planning and all that. But lastly, just wanted to thank you, Mr. Maslin, for your efforts there and clinching the unanimous approval from the what they call the LEOs, the local elected officials, to kind of start this merger happening.
I also want to thank Wendy for her support, because she goes to the same meetings I do.
8 a.m. or so.
Would you like to make a motion, Mr. Mayor?
I move that the City Council approve Resolution 20-05 as drafted.
Second.
Ms. Felico?
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Fryling?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Mr. Zhang?
Aye.
That concludes our new business for today and takes us to open forum. Anybody who would like to address council on any matter is welcome to come forward. We ask that you please state your name and address and limit your remarks to 5 minutes or fewer. Seeing no one come forward, close the open forum. I believe we have closed session today.
We do, sir. So I'll move to go into closed session pursuant to Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia for the purpose of discussing one matter per subparagraph 6 regarding the investing of public funds where competition or bargaining is involved, where, if made public initially, the financial interests of the city may be adversely affected.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Felico?
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Fryling?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Mr. Zhang?
Aye.
Oh, sorry.
Aye.
Council will take a brief recess and then reconvene in closed session.